Welcome to the Engineering Seed podcast.
Just go. Thanks for coming in, Alex.
That's all right, mate.
Yeah. So kick off with, what got you into engineering. I think you studied previously beforehand, and
Yeah.
Why you got into it, what you were doing beforehand, and
So I left high school wanting to be a designer or an artist, and sort of went overseas to live with my dad for a year. He's a citizen of South Africa, so I went over there and worked for a year, or 8 months really, and then I sort of did some just work in an office and came back and I deferred my degree that I'd been offered at Western Sydney University. And then I went back to that and I did a semester of that, and then kind of was at the same time doing work in like patient transport stuff, and so I decided that I probably wanted to do something medical, so I enrolled in a medical science degree. I started doing that, and I actually only did like general maths in high school, and then decided that I want to go to medical school, and what I'll do is I'll take a math elective just so I know what's going on and I can pass the admission test easily, etc., etc. So I took a foundation mathematics course that basically would just allow you to have an understanding of extension 1 mathematics.
so is this to get into med?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I was doing it to pass the physical science part of the graduate medicine application.
Yep.
And I did it, and I really liked it. Like I scored very well, and I found it quite satisfying and all that sort of stuff. And so I came from this point where I was just reading books about like Richard Feynman and like Edward Frankl, a mathematician from the USSR, and John von Neumann, and all these different interesting people, and realised that they were all like physical quantitative scientists, not like life scientists. And I kind of thought, well, when am I going to get a chance to study something like that? And I kind of thought, this is like the only time that I'm really going to have the most flexible. Like I could still do it later in life, and I was 22 at the time, and I was kind of like, okay, well I can go into med school and do that, and that's 10 years, and then I'll be 32, and then maybe I can do something then, but I'll probably be a doctor by then. So I'm like, okay, so I can do it, but alternatively at the time I was thinking, I can do this engineering degree, and then I can go to med school after anyway.
So you finished med science?
Yeah, well, I was like a semester away from finishing.
Okay.
And I sort of thought, okay, well, I can do the engineering degree, or I can go to med school. And so I sort of just got so fed up with like picking between them that I actually was just said arbitrarily, like, what should I choose? And I woke up one day and I go, okay, engineering.
Yep.
And so it's not as inspirational as it probably should be. But I was just so interested in it though that I thought I'd have like deathbed regrets. For that. So I was like, okay, I gotta do it. And so I enrolled. So I didn't actually graduate my medical science degree. What I did was, it was actually going to knock off a year of time if I combined my medical science degree with an engineering degree.
Okay.
So then I would basically have fulfilled all the medical science requirements, and then I just knock out the engineering degree, and that was only going to take 4 years instead of the 5 years that was required otherwise. And so I was like, okay, cool. So I'll do that, and that's just like sort of granular detail about how UTS works. It's not really that interesting, right? Like, it was just like, okay, I'll just enroll in the dual degree. So technically the way I've always thought of it is that I finished my medical science degree and I'm doing engineering, but technically I'm enrolled in a double degree. But I finished my medical science units years ago, so I haven't really done any biology in a long time, but or physiology or anything like that. And so I started, and I'm 23 at the time, and I was sort of the eldest person in the class, and I would get there and sort of say things like, so why do you want to do engineering? And people would kind of be like, I don't know. And I kind of found that a bit I remember that being like quite a funny thing, and like, I was like, but no one's thought about it. Like, no one's really like had a massive think about that. But yeah, so that's basically my route in. And then pretty much since then I've just been doing subjects and
Doing electrical engineering?
Yeah. So electrical engineering, started off, first year is very general, and then obviously second year we do some more detailed stuff like circuit analysis, and then signals and systems, and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you were going into uni, were you for engineering? Were you like, I want to do this type of engineering when I get out, or was it just the fascination you had for it was as you were going in that sort of drew you in, or?
Yeah. So because I had I always had this like weird, what's the word? Like I guess it's respect. I just had respect for the mathematical sciences. I wanted to do the most mathematical engineering I could do. Because I was like, oh, maybe I should do a mathematics degree or a physics degree, but I kind of thought like, oh no, at the end of it, I want to be like a recognized professional. Like at that point, and now I've studied for 7 years, so I don't want to get out and just be like have a degree. I'd rather have like a Engineers Australia acknowledged accreditation. So I was like, okay, I'll do an engineering degree. And the closest thing that you can get to physics from engineering is electrical engineering. So I definitely wanted to do electrical, just because you do more mathematics subjects and you get to do. Well, everyone always complains about how hard it is compared to the other engineering streams, but yeah, I just basically wanted to do the nitty gritty.
Yeah. Is there a reason why you wanted to do engineering as opposed to doing physics or doing maths?
Yeah, I guess I didn't want to be divorced from what people are actually doing in the real world. I was mainly concerned about job prospects. Like when you look at employability statistics, electrical engineering had good, like first year graduate job income was quite high. The percentage chance of getting employed was quite high, and the demand was there as well. Like there's demand for people who can do those things because a lot of people don't want to do them, and so I kind of thought, yeah. So with that, I've forgotten exactly where we were going with that, but essentially I wanted to do electrical engineering just because there was security there instead of physics, right? So
Yeah.
so with physics, I just felt like I knew a lot of people who'd done physics degrees and then done something completely unrelated, and I wanted to go into something where I would be doing nitty-gritty things, but then I would then get to use those nitty-gritty things.
Yep.
Yeah. So it was always going to be an engineering degree rather than a physics or math degree, just because I wanted to be pragmatic, useful stuff,
Yeah.
right? And not to say that isn't useful, but like that's the way I was thinking then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And so I guess you've done some different things throughout your uni degree compared to other people that are usually just trying to get through it.
Yeah.
Do you have sort of a way that you go into a subject where you're like, this is what I want to learn from this subject? Do you have that sort of forethought? Because for me, a lot of it's just been, how do I get through this course?
How do you want me to jump and that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think by nature I'm like very disagreeable. Like in general, not that I'm a jerk or anything, but it's more like if I know something and someone says contradictory, I tell them that they're wrong. And because of that, I think I've always I've studied quite hard to understand what something is, because I sort of value the truth. But I also when I go into something, I'm always thinking, okay, what is this teaching me? Why do I need to know this? I look at those parts of the subject outline that are like, at the end of this, you'll be able to do blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
I'm always at Wikipediaing like what that is and where that's used and who invented it and like when and like how it came to be that it's used in an application. And I've always been interested in like the history of the development of a technique or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. So I think I go in with a bit of like also understanding that I think maybe it's the mature age thing, or just like the veteran amount of years of study.
Yeah.
That the people who teach you aren't infallible either, right? So they are human beings just like you and me, which means that they forget things and they make errors, and so I'm always aware of that, and I think that also attunes you to always paying attention instead of just copying down what's on the board or how an example is done. It's like, well, why are we doing it that way? Why is this happening in this particular way? And why are we using this equipment as opposed to that equipment? And it's very much trying to reduce error, essentially. So I think there's that, but that also has gotten me into issues where I've gone into a subject, realised that it's one of those subjects where they just want you to jump, they don't really want you to ask questions, they say jump this high, and I go, why? And it doesn't get me anywhere, and I spin my wheels, and there's quite a few subjects, not quite a few actually, probably like 2 out of like it's got to be 20, 30 that I would have done by now. But there was 2 of them also where I ended up just getting like a pass grade just because I realized that it wasn't really going to benefit me. And so I feel like it's a double-edged sword, like, but then there's subjects like mathematics subjects where the reason is like there's you can start from the axioms of why we do something, of like the assumptions, and then build all the way up, and there's this massive theory, so there's always a reason, right? There's always a reason why something works, and so I think I've always enjoyed that because of that.
Yeah.
And the subjects where I didn't do so well are like the economics and finance subjects where it's just like, you use a spreadsheet to do this calculation, and I just gotta go, why are we doing this? Like, what's this for? Like, isn't that what a finance department does? And et cetera, et cetera. And like, where's the formula for this? Like, where did you define this term? And it's like, okay, they're not mathematicians, they're accountants, and so it's kind of a hard bit of education. But yeah, so I think it's like, to summarize, like pragmatic, like disagreeableness and like trying to reduce error.
Yeah.
I think I just try to stay glued in the real world a bit more than usual.
Yeah. So so at the moment you're as well sort of looking at what you're going to be doing soon. Are you in your penultimate year yet?
Yeah. Well, I'm in so I finish mid next year.
Yeah.
So I only have 1 semester left.
Yeah.
And I'm just wrapping up everything now. And we're done mid next year, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. And so I guess one of the things that you did in your second or third year was Cool on Cloud, which is a really cool initiative where you were sort of helping people. That was a subject I found as well. And just trying to help people in a bit of a community sort of way to get through.
There was this subject over summer of 2017 to 18 called Electronics and Circuits, and it was like a summer enrollment. And I just finished second year, and the reason that I felt like I did okay was because I had this group of friends and we'd all study, but sort of study not together, right? So we would study in a way that I would study one thing and they would study another thing, and then we'd sort of come together for classes throughout the week, or even just hanging out in the learning precinct, and we would show each other how to do things, and it sort of really catalyzed everyone's learning. So if someone had really well developed one skill, they could plant the seed for the other person, and then vice versa, and there was sort of like this symbiotic relationship between different people of the friend group. And I kind of thought, like, how do we take this and generalize it over to a bigger group of people? Like, how do we take this this effect and like broaden the scope? And the way that I thought about that was, okay, we get everyone who's done this subject that everyone's enrolled in over summer, and that I know and can convince to come in on the days that they were coming in for classes. So they had this like sort of hectic schedule where they would get them in the morning for a tutorial, and then they'd have a bit of a break, and then there'd be a lab in the afternoon. And so what we would do is we would go into the learning precinct in the break, which was like, I think it was like 3 hour break. So they would have time to like go and eat lunch, and then they would come and do some study. And we would just sit there and we would do our own thing. Like, we were working on projects over the summer and other things, and some people were on internship and they would come in only like 1 day a week or whatever. And we would just sit there and join the tables together, and they could come and ask us a question when they got stuck on something, and otherwise they'd just be studying. So we called it, it was just like full of like electrical engineering jokes, so we just called it like parallel studying, like parallel resistance. And so the idea was that our voltage would be equivalent to theirs, right? So it was just an idea so that the people who had the information in their brains could easily pass it on to the other people. Because I kind of feel like the hardest part of learning is literally just the transfer of information. Like, that's like how do I take the data stored in my brain and put it in your brain in a similar way, like without damaging it and without and allow you to become competent in something that's kind of significantly technical enough that it can't be explained in a simple paragraph. Like, it's like something that takes a simple explanation, then a more complex explanation, then example 1, example 2. And so you needed something that was going to be a few hours a day. But it also had to be self-motivated for them. So it wasn't going to be like we were tutoring them. It was going to be that they would do their own work, and then we would essentially close the feedback loop. So sometimes you get stuck with a problem, and it's like for a research scientist, it's like what they want to do. They want to be stuck on a problem and like kind of figure it out. But that's not what you want to do in like second year or first year engineering. You want to get stuck on a problem and then get some help and figure out why you're wrong, and then correct your issue and then keep going. And if you don't have someone to sit there and say, oh, look, you've made an error here, and then it's cascaded and caused this massive problem, and that's why you can't figure out what the voltages are here. If you don't have someone to do that, you just don't solve it, is what I really found. So if you didn't have someone to ask about it or talk to about it, you just weren't going to solve it. And so it was just about catalyzing that feedback loop, like essentially just making it quicker for people to get back on track.
Yeah. Is that something that has sort of built on what you're wanting to do after, or you always had that sort of approach to teach and things like that?
I think it's just that I go through this thing when I'm learning something where it's kind of like, I kind of think, why are we doing this? This seems a bit like extraneous and a bit like boring. And then you learn it and you think, this is awesome and this is great and I want everyone to know about it. So it's kind of like you go through this process of like, or there's like some self-doubt in the middle as well, where you sort of like, why are we doing this? And you're like, oh, I get it. And then you're like, oh, no, wait, no, I don't. And then you think, oh, wait, no, I do. And then you go, oh, cool. And then you get really good at it. And then you kind of think like you have this skill and you want to know. And at the moment, we're still in university. So it's not like we're sitting there like troubleshooting circuits every day and I can use it and go, yeah, I'm really good at solving doing nodal analysis on some circuits and figuring out what's going on my little breadboard. But we're not doing that. We're still learning, and so the way that you can still maintain that skill and pass it on to other people who need it right now to pass the subject to get an accreditation is to just show them how to do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's just. In regards to it being what I want to do in the future, maybe. Like I've been doing a bit of teaching since I've been in my final year. I've been running some tutorials and stuff for some subjects in the School of Maths and Physical Sciences, like teaching first year physics and first year maths.
Yeah.
And that's been really cool. But I don't know if it's like that I always wanted to be a teacher, because I definitely didn't, because I didn't like high school. I wanted to be out of there as soon as possible. But I do love talking to people about science, science stuff. So yeah, probably.
Yeah.
It's probably just like there's a personal thing to it as well, right? It's not just about helping people. There's some intrinsic property of like, oh, I know this and I like talking about it, so two birds, one stone. You benefit and I benefit. Cool.
Yeah. And on that, then, you've not just done what you've needed to do for university. You continue to teach yourself things and
sure.
So what do you love doing? Where are you at with that?
I think after the third semester of engineering, we were taught C programming, right? And I really liked that subject and I really liked C programming, and I thought, well, everyone's talking about this Python language and how useful it is, and so I found a good book on it. Luckily, I realized later it was a good book. Like I was very lucky to stumble on something good. I sat down with my friend Adam and we just taught ourselves Python, and that was really, really fun. And that's proved to just be like one of the most invaluable skills I've ever learned, just because there's so many libraries for it and stuff like that. And it's like to the point where I've been like paid to do like software development in Python, and I've become really, really good at using like Unix-based computers, like Linux terminal scripting and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And like I've learned a few more programming languages since then. So that's going really well. Like I really like programming, but I've realized recently that I don't really want to do that for a job, probably mainly just because it's so, there's so many cases to handle and that sort of thing. Although it's fun when it's quick and dirty and gets you a result really quick. That's fun. But what else have I been doing? I've been doing a lot of. So I went down a bit of a rabbit hole after doing advanced maths and physics, and sort of got interested in some advanced mathematical topics that I couldn't really comprehend yet. So I tried buying these. I bought these textbooks. I was like, how hard could it be? I'll just like buy the textbook and I'll read the book and I'll get it, right? Yeah. And so I bought these books on differential geometry and topology, which are these sort of like, if you're doing a math degree, it would be like your final year topics. You would do those, and then you would move on into doing a project, and then you would do a PhD. It is how a mathematical research scientist would go about their career. And so it's sort of like you have to be quite mathematically literate to get what's going on. And I tried jumping into these, and I was kind of like all over the place, and I spun my wheels for a while, like for most of the summer of 2018 to 2019. I spun my wheels doing that. Like I made some progress and like learned some lingo, but I wasn't really good at it. And I managed to get some final like subjects that I might have had to do for medical science, and because I did so well in medical science, I said, can I please just have them as mathematics subjects? And they said, sure, no problem. And they mapped them over to linear algebra for autumn and then differential equations for spring now. And so I've been doing a bunch of linear algebra and differential equations this year, which has been really fun, and sort of exploring that vein of like mathematics. And I feel like I'm starting to become really mathematically literate now. Like I can read things and understand what's going on. And I managed to. When this all started, I enrolled in linear algebra and like showed a lot of enthusiasm, and then got referred to the head of maths and physical sciences, the head of the school, and I met with him, and he was like, I'm happy to supervise you on doing a project or whatever you want. And so, and then he said, we met and talked and had a discussion about what I was interested in, and he just sort of said, okay, well, you should just meet with me now every 2 weeks. Like we should just get together and just talk about what you're reading about.
Yeah.
And so I can guide you onto like what's going on. And so that's been really, really cool. So over the last, I guess like 3 months, I've been meeting with Tony Dooley in maths and physical sciences, and he'll just I'll be like, I'm reading this and I was thinking about that and blah 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 blah, and he'll go, okay, let's go back to the first principles and then derive this out and see how you're going wrong with that and blah blah blah, which has been like a really good, and it's sort of like closing that feedback loop I was talking about with Cool Cloud, but he's doing that for me, which is really, really cool. And so I'm really finding mathematics really, really rewarding and interesting, and I'm like really keen to keep pursuing that. And mathematics has pretty much been all I've been thinking about the last 12 months. I kind of feel like it's a language that I want to get much, much better at so that I can do more interesting engineering things. And then
have there been things that you've been applying it to in the engineering world, or with your software, with Python or anything like that?
Yeah, so I think it's been cool to sort of learn some techniques that have put my programming skills to the test. So we learned some numerical methods in linear algebra about how to approximate the solution to a matrix equation, like AX equals B. And there were a couple of methods, and we were tasked with doing the first couple of iterations in a tutorial solution. And instead I was like, okay, let's see if I can write it in C.
Yeah.
And I did, and I thought that was really, really cool. And recently I've been working on doing the same thing with like finite difference methods for solving boundary, like differential equations, like boundary value differential equation problems. And that's really fun as well. But essentially, it's been mainly, it's kind of like you learn a language so that you can, and maybe like calling mathematics a language, I think some people get upset with that, but like, I kind of think of it like I'm trying to learn this language so that I can write interesting critical pieces, analyses on things, right? So at the moment, I'm still I'm conversational. I would say I'm conversational in mathematics. I can talk about it. I know how to troubleshoot my own issues now much better, and I'm getting better at proofs and things like that. But I'm nowhere near where I want to be. Right? To be at the point where I can contribute something interesting to like an engineering method. But I've definitely found doing engineering problems much, much easier ever since I've started doing that. So it's kind of like, instead of it being like using it specifically, like I learned how to solve PDEs with the Laplace transform or whatever. It's like not so much that, it's more like that I do calculations so often now, and I do them in a general way that if I get a problem, I'll solve it generally, and then I'll specify the solution to a problem that I have for my class, or I don't make as many mistakes, or I understand the theory quicker, or I've been exposed to the math. Like sometimes you get taught something and they go, okay, we're going to do the Lagrangian and we have to do partial differentiation of this and this and this, and then we have to sum it up. Like having been exposed to it beforehand and you know the maths already, you're like, oh cool, no problem, it's not a big deal. But if you haven't done it for 2 years, it's like a whole like, oh gosh, how do we, what's the rules again? Whereas it just means that you're quicker.
Yeah.
yeah, it's like a catalyst. I found it much more like a catalyst,
Yeah.
which kind of pays dividends because then the time you spend studying maths sort of like you make it back by
Yeah.
like just when you go to do problems for
Yeah.
your engineering classes and stuff. Yeah.
Are there particular areas in engineering that you're sort of wanting to pursue, or is it more mathematical
Yeah.
and see where that takes you?
I think it's going to be a dualistic approach where it's kind of going to be like I definitely want to dive deep into the mathematics, but that's an endless rabbit hole. Like it will never end. Like the branches of the tree are just infinitely long, and for me anyway, right at this point is the way I'm seeing it. Whereas I am interested in like a little bit of electrical engineering things, and I'm interested in control. I'm interested in electronics. I'm interested in high frequency stuff. I'm interested in antennas. I did some electrodynamics stuff recently with Peter.
Yep.
That was really cool. I'm not very good at it yet, but I'm getting better. And it's hopefully it's like I'm taking two forks in the road and then they'll meet together at some point later on, is what I'm hoping. But I think you can't really bank on that right now, because otherwise you won't do it. You'll be like, oh, when am I going to get returns on my time that I'm putting in? But instead I'm just focusing on like, oh, I just really enjoy this, and I really enjoy mathematics, and I really enjoy engineering, and maybe even one day like the stuff that I did with medical science will like feed into that as well, and I'll be able to use some of the stuff I know about physiology and genetics and molecular biology and all that sort of stuff to build something interesting. But I'm fine with like just plodding along and like learning stuff and doing useful things along the way for people until I get there. So
yeah, cool. Is there anything that you're doing at the moment with like practically engineering that you're doing, if it's in control, or are you just sort of learning and while you're still in uni, sort of stretch?
So I was employed to do some software development for the maths and physical sciences for one of their subjects, to teach people to use Python to essentially solve maths problems easier, or solve them symbolically. So our computer's really good at like storing things digitally in a binary way. To store something as a symbol and to manipulate it symbolically like we do with mathematics is quite hard in a computer. But people have developed packages like we're using Python's SymPy, which is kind of like Mathematica in a lot of ways, but obviously like open source and that sort of stuff. So it just means that there's no license and fee and all that. But so we're using that at the moment. But a big issue comes with, I've noticed the way that the assessments are built in universities, and that they're custom written each time, and especially with first year mathematics subjects, which I've been involved in teaching, there's like this, you have to cycle through different test papers each week. And so what ends up happening is that if you give 5 different tutorial classes on Monday through Friday, the same paper, you can actually correlate like a positive correlation. So as the week goes on, people get a higher and higher grade on average, and it's because everyone tells the next person like what's in the paper, and so the average grade goes up with time. So what they had to do was they had to generate a different test paper for every day. And so I kind of started working on this thing where what if we could generally state the problems in a bunch of ways, and then generate integer values, and then have an algorithm that spits out like a LaTeX formatted solution to that. So that the markers, you can generate a paper for every single tutorial even, and they can all have different numerical values, but you can still have unique problem sets, and then you can have like so basically I've been working on this bit of software that will use like a database of questions, and then symbolically like produce a question, and then produce an answer in the same way. But essentially trying to make a piece of software that can generate tests really, really easily and in a nice way, and that is useful to academics. So there's that, and then I've been drawing up some schematics for like a ball and beam control system that I want to build from scratch. So I've been doing that, but I haven't gone anywhere past like some simple like calculations and like a bit of like thinking about the ICs and all that sort of stuff, and the control inputs and outputs and how I would do it, and like where I would leave it to the person, like essentially I want to recreate the one that's down in the control lab.
Yeah.
But like myself, I want to do it myself and like see if I can get it working.
Yeah.
And then see if I can implement it with like chuck a Raspberry Pi in there, and so that there's a more like modern interface to what you're doing and stuff. But beyond that, I'm pretty busy actually with like teaching and doing subjects. So I wish there was always more time for project-based work, but you've got to pay rent at the end of the day.
Do you have a clear path of what you're doing after next semester?
Yeah, I'm going to take a year to just teach at the university. The plan is to do graduate studies, so I want to do graduate studies in engineering in some way.
Yeah.
But I want to make it as highly mathematical as possible so that I can pursue that interest as well as maybe provide some useful insights into some engineering problems. But and like I think it's become evident in the conversation, like I really enjoy teaching for both myself and the students.
Yeah.
I find that really good, and I get positive feedback from teaching, so I think I'll keep doing that. But I think after like 7 years of university, I think I want a year off just to hang out and just probably just teach for a while and think and have some time away from being assessed and all that, and then I'll come back hopefully with like in full force. And I don't know where I'll do the PhD yet, but probably it's almost certainly going to be in Australia.
Yeah.
So that's the plan at the moment. Just
Awesome.
great graduate studies and but year off before that. So that's the plan.
Sweet.
That's the plan.
So summing up the conversation,
Yeah.
is there something that you should leave for people that are just coming in from maybe high school into university, probably in engineering
Mm-hmm.
or similar? What's something that you've sort of found or you've seen from younger people going through that you've identified and maybe not had the same issue, or you had a different mindset about a different approach?
Yeah. It sort of reminds me of like a talk that I did for incoming students. It was called like Learning Squared, because it was about learning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not my title, but I inherited the talk and I gave it. The same year I started Cooling Club, actually.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. 2017 to 18. Yeah. And I talked a lot about the fact that you should be optimizing for your understanding. You should always try to maximize your understanding in a subject, and if you do that, your grade will follow. But people seem to worry a lot about like getting this percentage point and that percentage point, but they don't worry about understanding what it is that they're doing. And you'd actually find that if you worried about that more, you actually have to study less.
Yeah.
If you think that just getting all the points in something in life is going to be great, that's fine, but then if you have a 50% final exam and you don't understand everything, you're going to bomb that, right? And I kind of think that also there are people who get HDs, like high distinctions, who are really, which is the top grade for people who are listening who don't know what that is, right? So a high distinction is the highest grade you can get in university. In terms of like a tier class system, so it's like a high distinction, then goes down to distinction, then down to credit, then pass, and then fail, right? So if you get a high distinction, there are people who get that who really do understand what is going on. It's usually the case, but there are also people who get there and they kind of get it and then they just forget what they did, and they don't really internalize it. And that's the whole point of what you're doing at university, is to like internalize what it is you're being taught, right?
Yeah.
You want to know something so intuitively that you can recognize it when you see it. Otherwise, you don't know what you're looking at, and that skill that you may have, you don't even know that you can use it, right?
Yeah.
Another thing I probably would say,
before we go on to that, what do you mean by maximizing your learning? How would someone think about maximizing their learning? Is it something like an end goal? Can you expand on that?
So like maximizing like understanding, I really think there's a couple of ways to do that. There's like research proven ways of like active recall, where you have like a flashcard system. Like flashcard systems require an active recall. So if I say to you, what's the definition of the full derivative of a partial differential or of a multivariate function? And you would have to then without any prompt or any material, like regurgitate it back to me.
Yeah.
So that'd be like an active recall of something, and that's been shown to like form memory as best as humanly possible. And there's lots of literature out there and like videos on YouTube about that by like a guy called Ali Abdaal. He does really good study techniques. Like there's a bunch of people who who are career specialists in like productivity. And like, you know, watching those videos and stuff like that, it gives you a good sample of ways to do that. But ways to maximize your understanding generally beyond like doing techniques like active recall is to just care about what you're doing. I think like if you can't instill the passion or the passion isn't there, that's really, really hard to do that. And that's not something that I really have an answer for.
Yeah.
If you don't really care about what you're doing, I don't know where to start then. But if you do care, then and you're currently not feeling great about how well you're going, then that's fine, because you can always figure out ways to get better. But there's that seed of really finding what you're doing interesting and thinking that it's important. That's something that I don't know how to fix, but everything else is like totally soluble. Like you can solve all the other problems.
Yeah.
But if you have that, you're fine.
Yeah.
Even if you think you're rubbish at maths, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, to put it in context, like I really cared about engineering and science and that sort of stuff, but I did general maths in high school, right? And I didn't do very well either. And then now I'm at university teaching mathematics. So it's kind of like the traversal to that point, like it seems not possible, but it is, right? And it's achieved through a successive summing up of like discrete steps of like, okay, do this subject and that subject and learn about this, learn about that. And if you do it slowly over time, all of a sudden you realize you're way further ahead of where you were before. But yeah, the learning understanding, it's hard to put into words like what it is, but mainly it's just interest. Yeah, it's just interest.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
What was the second point you were?
I'm trying to remember. So we were talking about.
Sorry.
No, you're right. You're fine. We were trying to say that you. The other thing that I talked about in the talk was, well, it was about like actually going to classes. So there was actually like some statistics done on some data of like what your ATAR looks like compared to your GPA at the end of your degree. So your ATAR will leave school and if you actually do it, there's no correlation. Like the correlation is zero. Like it's just noise. Like if you correlate like ATAR versus GPA, it's like random. Like it looks like white noise. So they're not correlated in any way. But what is correlated is the amount of tutorials that you attend. So if on average you attend like all the tutorials, it's very, very high. I think it's like 0.8, 0.9 correlation to your grade of like what you get, right? So I really recommend just going, even if you don't think you'll do anything, like and just put aside the time to just rock up and try to learn through osmosis, even if you're not feeling it, but to try and be as prepared as possible. And like pick the brains of the people that are there, right? Like the whole point of coming here is to get like it's like apprenticeship. You're trying to learn from the masters, right? Sometimes you won't get a master, you'll get like a novice, but that's okay. Like still pick their brains until you get to the bottom of what you want to figure out. But some people are like Peter, are just like bottomless pits of that information. So you can just go on forever, just like trying to find out what the bottom of something is, and they'll be able to just constantly tell you stuff until you get to the point where you're like, okay, I get it all now. Yeah, okay, cool. And I think like being confident enough to ask questions is super important, because you get to do that. You get to like there's no way like you can Google things. People say this all the time. They're like, oh, I can just Google it. Like why do I need a degree when I can just Google this stuff? And it's like, yeah, sure, you can get Google, but Google, like what happens when you type into Google? You type into Google like what is a transfer function? And Google gives you a Wikipedia article written by a mathematician about what a transfer function actually is based on an information theoretic point of view. And you kind of think, gosh, I don't know what's going on here. Like, I really don't. So what Google has done is it's overshot your understanding and given you something super technical that someone who already knows what it is will understand. Yeah. And maybe you'll luck out and find a good resource and stuff like that, but you usually have to put in a lot of effort for that. But what is actually the most energetically efficient way to get what you want is to talk to a human being who knows it. Because what they'll do is, like a human being is able to say, they're able to gauge what your understanding is, and then they're able to look at the information and then cut it down to what you will understand and then give it to you. And then you can go back to them once you understand that, and then they can give you another version of that until you do understand it. And so it's actually a much, in my opinion, much more efficient way to understand things is to just ask someone about that, right? And to pick people's brains. And the funny thing is they actually like it 9 times out of 10. Unless they're really busy and like running around like a headless chicken, they really like it because they've spent their life, if they're an academic, studying this thing. And for someone to take an interest in what they're doing is kind of, for them, a beautiful thing. And they want to share it with the world. And so I really, really recommend asking questions.
Yeah, awesome. Is there anything else that you had to say in the talk?
It was a bunch of stuff. But it was, setting expectations as well. Like, if you think about when you've been upset by something, it's because you've expected it to be another way.
Yeah.
And so if you set your expectations properly, you'll be fine. And so I think having expectations that are correct is you get by talking to people who are actually doing what you want to do. And so you go out there and you talk to them and you see exactly what it is you're doing. And the reality that you find after doing that a bunch of times for a bunch of things that you're interested in is that nothing is as glamorous as you want it to be. Like, there will always be parts of a job that you don't like. There will always be parts of a responsibility that suck. There will always be parts of a topic that you find grueling or just not enjoyable. And that's okay, because that's what life is like sometimes. And I think setting expectations about what that kind of distribution is to the person really helps in making sure that people don't quit, or that you don't feel like you should quit because you suck at blah.
Yeah.
Or you expect you have like you know how much effort you have to put in to, for example, electronics and circuits over 2017 to 2018 summer in order to get a good grade. Like, you've talked to people who have done it, and so you know. So just like setting expectations is probably the last thing I can think of that we did in that talk. But, that's hard to do. I think it's something you learn over time.
Yeah. So one last thing then.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what is the definition of university? What is it there for? And so just to give a good idea on how people can go in with a good mindset.
Yeah, that's my dream question.
Yeah.
Because I get this all the time, because people, when I'm teaching them, are like, why are we learning this? Like, so I teach a mathematics course that's for computer science and mathematics majors.
Yeah.
And they come in, and this one guy today, it's funny that he said it, because today he said to me, I have friends at another university who have learned X, Y, Z languages, and they already know how to do blah, 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 blah. Why are we doing so much mathematics? Why are we doing all this theory? I don't understand. And why can't we do more? I don't know, he said something like JavaScript, PHP, Electron framework or something. And I just kind of thought, like, and I said to him, that's not what university is about. Like, university is not about getting the industry standard skills. Like, as much as that might be the way it's marketed, I don't think that is really beneficial. So, like, in a theoretical situation, imagine that you are trained to the industry standard of everything. And that's all you focus on at university. It's like, okay, learn Altium Designer. Okay, learn Autodesk Inventor. Okay, learn MATLAB 2019B. Okay, learn XYZ, right? Like, just keep learning these frameworks, right? But you don't learn anything else. Then in that, like, which is like a really extreme case, but like, imagine that was the case. You would have a really good understanding of those particular pieces of software, but as soon as someone asked you something that was slightly outside of your domain of knowledge, you are buggered because you can't answer the question. You don't understand the bigger picture of what's going on outside of that. And I think what university is for is not so much as developing a bigger picture for you, but giving you the skills so that you can build your own bigger picture. So with that, as an example, learning about mathematics for me has not been about learning how to solve an ordinary differential equation or learning how to invert a matrix so that I can get the solution for X or whatever. It's been more about becoming literate to the point where I can go and read a textbook and understand what's going on, right? And then I can build my own worldview about what mathematics is. Or in the same way, I understand linear circuit analysis so that I can look at schematics and understand what it is that they do. I can analyze them and go, oh, the output would be blah. Or I can look at a control system and say, oh, you have to control that with state space design. You can't control it otherwise, right? There's all these tools that you're taught so that you can figure things out yourself. And that's what university is for. It's to teach those bedrock axiomatic skills where it's kind of like thinking. But in order to think in some certain ways, you have to be exposed to different styles of thinking. So like, reading about, and although we don't really do general education at our university. Like reading about what philosophers think, and reading about the way that other scientists have gone about making discoveries, and reading about what successful engineers have done is just a great way to realize this as well. Is that the people who have done the best have always focused on keeping it simple and staying down at the bedrock of what it is they're doing. They're never focused on, I've got to update my MATLAB to the latest version so that I have the newest toolbox to do blah. I don't think that really helps. I think that if you can write software and you've written documentation, you know how to read documentation and you can figure out anything, right? And if you've done that in a couple of languages and not been married to one specific language, although I personally love C, which is, I admit my bias, but you'll excuse my hypocrisy, but like I think you should transfer between skills, different languages, and do the same thing, and so you get a generalized set of skills about like how things work, and you get this sort of like macroscopic abilities. I think that's what university is for.
Yeah.
It basically just transforms your brain a bit. Is what it's for, to put in a bootloader that works a bit better.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
No worries.
That was great.
Cheers. Thank you.